Welcome to the Autoimmune Campfire.
Join us, coaches Helen and Nona, for honest, heartfelt conversations around living well with a chronic condition.
Come sit at our campfire. There's a chair waiting for you. Well, hey, Helen.
Hey, Nona.
We're here. Wasn't it fun to see the intro for the first time?
Oh my gosh, so fun.
So I'm so excited to be here with you and to be getting started with the Autoimmune Campfire podcast. So today we're going to be talking about why we're doing this, who we are, and what we're planning for this first season. So you ready to get started?
I am.
I just want to start by talking a little bit about why we're even doing this, because I feel like this was such a big deal for us. So do you want to go ahead and talk about what really spoke to you about starting this podcast?
Well, so we were talking about our experiences in having these diagnoses in these conditions. And every time we had one of these conversations, we said, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. And it became one of those, they became a lifeline to me, even 6 years in to diagnosis. So I would say, every time you said, we should have recorded this, these are the kind of conversations I've been wanting to have. What if we were to share them? And so that, you created the idea, and then here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So we're going to talk more through this episode about our own stories and our own diagnosis. But one of the things, like Helen said, that kept happening, right? We kept saying, oh, we should record this. And so here we are. And I think we should probably back up a little and introduce ourselves. Why are we here? What are we doing here? So do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can talk about the first season?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Helen Samson Mullen, and I am a leadership coach and wellness strategist. And I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2019. And it was a big change in my life at that point. And we'll talk about that more in the story. More importantly, I'm a wife, a mother, a puppy mother, and sister and friend, and love my people fiercely, including Nona. Nona, you go.
Yeah, so I'm Nona Jordan. I am a master's certified coach and a yoga therapist. And I was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis earlier this year. And the first person that I reached out to tell about the diagnosis was Helen. And I went on a search early on, just like, where are people having conversations about autoimmune disorder? Not like, this is the diet you have to follow, this is the protocol, but like, where are the people telling their own stories about their experience? And every conversation that Helen and I had was like, oh, we should be recording this because this would be so helpful for other people. And I think the thing that we really bring to this conversation is that we've both been coaches for a long time. We went through coach training together in 2009. And then we've subsequently done trainings and all kinds of stuff, plus had our own coaching practices. And so having that background as coaches, I think, gives us a really unique perspective and placement in this conversation. So what do you think about that, Helen?
Yes, absolutely. I fully agree. And what we did, when we talked about recording this, because you did the same thing as I did, I was like, let me talk to other people who have this condition and what are they doing to thrive? And there was a lot of stuff on the internet that was helpful and a lot that wasn't helpful. And there are so many different ways that you can go. And our idea is really to share our stories and our experiences in service of connection and helping others to thrive from what we learned. I mean, Nona, one of the things you said when we were designing this podcast was, what do you wish you'd known in the first few months after your diagnosis? And we sat together and we just mapped out a bunch of things that we thought would be most helpful for listeners. And that's really what we're here for. Sometimes this stuff is very challenging. You're not alone in this because it does feel very lonely with these diagnoses.
It certainly can. Absolutely. And so, like Helen said, over the course of this first season, and we have grand designs for multiple seasons that actually will be interview based, but this first season, we really wanted to be about conversation and connection with you, the listener, the reader, the person who's been diagnosed, who has questions and just wants to hear other people's experiences. And so in this first season, we're going to start with our stories, our own individual stories, which I think is really interesting because you've had the diagnosis of RA for a while, 6 years, and I was just diagnosed. And so we have we're very different timelines and perspectives in the approach, in what we've experienced. And so we're going to start with that, with our stories. And then, like Helen said, what does thriving actually look like? Like, so often, what I certainly saw on the internet was this resignation. And I'm like, why? Why is there resignation? So, we really wanted to talk about what we do talk about when we're talking is how do we thrive? How do we find the nourishment and the movement, the pleasure, the spiritual connection, the rest that is really deeply, deeply satisfying and helps our bodies to thrive, and not by prescription, right? Not out of a fear based, oh my gosh, my disease is going to get worse if I don't do these things. No.
Oh gosh, yes. I think the other thing that when you look is this whole thing about you got to fight your way through it. You're a
No.
whatever warrior, put your condition in front of warrior. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it feels very like a different energy. I don't think fighting is really a healing energy. So we want to talk about, what's the energy that we're bringing to this? How we bring our own peace, how we bring pleasure in, which may look a little different than it did before diagnosis or the condition. So there's all sorts of things, how we move and breathe in our bodies. One of the things that I learned years ago from Nona was breathwork practice, just so important how we breathe. And there's so much research now around the benefits of that. So connection. Who do we want to be, right? We're sort of almost questioning now we have this new identity and not one we asked for sure, an unwanted identity. And so how do we create the new us, but from a place of groundedness and authenticity?
Absolutely. And a few things. One of your favorite questions and one of my favorite questions is, who do you want to be? And that is really the basis of these conversations is, who do you want to be? How do you want to be in the midst of this new diagnosis? And one of the things when you mentioned identity that we will definitely be getting into a lot during this first season is it isn't your identity, but it's a new piece of your identity, right? It's a new part of what you have in your life, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't have to define you. And the stories of how we've grappled with that because society, the internet, like there's a lot of focus on like, well, this is what you've got now, that there's this, again, resignation and just like, well, this is how you deal with it. And just a lot of fear based, almost like giving up energy that I see a lot of.
Mhm.
And we don't want that for you, for ourselves. Nor do we believe that people who have autoimmune conditions or other chronic conditions, that it has to define your life or how you live. Maybe it's just what I've found. Certainly, it's just a wake up call, right? It's an invitation to treat ourselves with more care and more intentionality. So, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
No, absolutely. I love that. And I think that the value that we bring can continue to grow even with these diagnoses. So I remember during the pandemic, it was like, oh, well, so it's a problem if you're a certain, if you're over 65 and if you're immune compromised, oh, well, never mind, and I was like, wait, we have incredible value whether we're immune compromised or not, whether we're 65 and above. And so I feel that what I would love people to take away from is Yeah, exactly as you were saying, who are you? But what's the value that you bring and can continue to bring, even in the face of challenge? So, what would you say about how we want people to come to the campfire, Nona?
Yes, because it is a campfire, and campfires are warm, welcoming places, and we have a lot of seats available for you to come and join us. And so we are inviting you to come to the campfire. We've created this space for not only our stories that hopefully will inspire you and give you food for thought as you are on your autoimmune journey or your chronic condition journey, but also we wanted to create a space for your stories and experiences. So you can come to the campfire in a number of ways. First of all, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. But the main campfire where you can ask questions, where you can share your experiences, is going to be on Substack. That is where we're going to house our conversations and our intimate campfire conversations with you and your stories and your experiences. So, Helen, do you have anything that you want to add about where we are going to be hosting and inviting people in?
No, not at all. So, whether you have a Substack or not, that's where we'll load it. But we invite you to listen on your favorite podcast of choice. So, whether it's Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or whatever you use, we welcome your comments. We welcome hearing from you.
So, like Helen mentioned at the beginning, one of the things is like, you are not alone. You are not alone. Helen, do you happen to know how many people in the United States alone have been diagnosed with autoimmune disorders? Do you know? I don't know. I was just wondering if you knew. You're such a good
I'm such
researcher.
a
I
reader.
thought you might know.
I, I, you know what? I don't even want to hazard a guess at that. But it's a large number, and there are over 100 autoimmune conditions. So I know that much. But I can look it up.
Oh, look at that. Between 24 and 50 million people in the United States have autoimmune disease. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. It's the third most common disease category after cancer and heart disease. And there's so little positive support, story sharing. I can't even tell you the number of people that I have been in conversation with who are like, I never talk about it. I hide it.
Oh, yes. I met so when I was first diagnosed, I went to some party and I was eating my own little meal because I eat gluten-free. And this woman said, "Why are you eating that?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm gluten-free and I have an autoimmune condition and it helps me personally." And she goes, "Oh, what do you have?" And I said, "Rheumatoid arthritis." She goes, "Oh, me too, since I was 27." And I've known her for years and I had no idea.
Wow.
No idea. Just, and I met another person, an introduction through a friend who is just phenomenal. She'd had rheumatoid arthritis since 16. And she said, "Yeah, nobody at work knows." And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that's incredible that she's able to functionally get through that. But it's also really on those days when it's most challenging, it's almost like where people don't necessarily understand. I don't know. I'm just very open about this diagnosis because I think it's helpful context.
Absolutely. Well, not only that, like if we don't feel comfortable to share and be vulnerable, we lose out on connection and support. And it's important to know, like, we're not alone, that you can thrive, that not everybody with an autoimmune disorder is going to end up disabled or in a wheelchair. I mean, it's possible, it can happen, but there are so many more people who are in the situation of not saying anything and just feel kind of alone in it. Just like, nobody else around me has this, but I do. So we really wanted to, first of all, bring it into the light, right? Bring it around the campfire and have these open conversations about what it means to live well with these chronic conditions. And I also just have to mention, it has been so inspiring. Some great British runners in the Olympics. Right now, we are watching the Olympics in our household. And there are some twins who are runners who have MS. And we have Suni Lee, who is our gymnast here in the US, who has chronic kidney disease, who didn't believe she was going to be able to compete. And so those people are telling their stories, and it's so inspiring. And you know what? Our everyday, regular human stories of living with these conditions and living well, I think has so much of an impact. So we hope that you will join us at the campfire. Helen, thank you so much. And I will see you back here next week.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Did you enjoy this campfire conversation? Please rate our podcast wherever you're listening to light the way for others to find the Autoimmune Campfire. The information provided on the Autoimmune Campfire is for educational or informational purposes only. It is not intended nor implied as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always, always consult your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you might have regarding a medical condition or treatment plan. The Autoimmune Campfire does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on this site or podcast. Recording and editing wizardry by Make Your Day Richer. Thanks for joining Helen and I around the campfire.